Hey guys, ViscoseComb24 here, bringing you a real quick redstone video. Today I'm going to be showing you all how to build this. It is my super compact 5x5 funnel door. So as you can see, when I flick the lever, it all closes. It's relatively fast. When I go on over to the back side, you can see I didn't give it a backside, but this was so that I could keep it as small as possible, and I was also struggling with making the backside work with this extender here. When I go back on over to the front and flick the lever again, you can see it also all opens. It's relatively quick considering its size, and let's get into the sizes. This thing is 9 blocks wide, 11 blocks tall, and 4 blocks deep. So it has a volume of 396 blocks. This is the smallest I've ever been able to make a 5x5 funnel door before, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. So to get started on this door, place down a block, then put 2 to either side. Obsidian, obsidian, 3 blocks in between, and then 3 more obsidian. Go under here, place down 3 slime, get out an observer, and have it facing towards the front. Then use it to position 2 sticky pistons facing up there and there. 3 normal pistons facing up just like so. And then put in 2 sticky pistons for the corners. Once you fill in your flooring, that is your bottom layout done and ready to be wired. Put a temporary block there. Sticky piston facing up. Block, sticky piston facing in towards the middle. Put down a temporary block there and use it to position these 3 pistons and then these 2 sticky pistons. Break it out, and then place in 5 blocks. Put 2 blocks there. Piston facing down, observer facing towards the outside of the door. 3 blocks. Then a redstone block right there, and a normal piston facing up, just like so. Put down 5 blocks, and that is your side layout prepared and ready to be wired. Put a sticky piston facing up, block, sticky piston facing in, temporary block there. Use it to position your 3 single piston extenders and then these 2 stickies. Put 5 blocks, 2 more. Piston facing down, observer facing towards the outside of the door, and then 3 blocks there. Block of redstone, and then sticky piston facing up right there. Fill in these blocks, and that is your side layout on this side, ready to be wired. Let's start over here. Put a sticky piston facing down with a redstone block on its face right there. Dust. Then a observer facing down right there into a block with a 1-tick repeater on its face. Then go up here, block, piston facing down. Get out your torches. Place down a torch, and then you can place another torch here. You won't have to mirror that to the other side. Then have an observer facing down into a piston. Updating an observer. Activating a sticky piston with an observer, and then a block right next to that piston. Once you've got that, go down here next to the redstone block, place a piston facing down, torch there and there. Get out glass right there with dust on it, observer there, and then an observer facing down right there. Get out a repeater, 2-tick, observer, 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 just like so. And then once you've got that, that's that side done. Now this side is going to be a little bit different. Start the same with your sticky piston facing down with a redstone block on its face. Put a block right there, a piston right there. Get out your torches. Torch, torch, no third torch this time. Put dust right there. Get an observer. Observer facing down right there with a 1-tick repeater on its face. Or a block right there. Then get out a observer, powering a piston. Updating an observer, powering a sticky piston with an observer facing in towards the middle, then a block, just like so. Then have a piston facing down right there, torch, torch. Then put a block right there, glass. Get out an observer, observer facing into a block with a hopper in front of it. There we are. Obsidian, dust, 2 more dust, and then a 4-tick repeater, just like so. And I'm going to really quickly check to make sure that I placed in something on this side. All right, good. So torch, block, and then a 1-tick repeater. We're going to go do that now on this side. Get out your observer, place it right there. 1-tick repeater, torch, block, then an observer facing down right there with a 2-tick repeater on its face, and then your 3 observers just like so. That is your sides completed, I believe. I'm just going to really quickly give them a check to make sure. And it looks like everything is set up. I went a bit fast, so if you need to, you can go back and rewatch everything, slow it down. Now onto the top. Block there and there. 3 obsidian in between them. Block of obsidian there and there. 3 blocks. 3 slime. Sticky piston, and then use this to position your 3 sticky pistons facing down. 3 normal pistons, and then your 5 sticky pistons right here. Finish off your ceiling. Now this is your input right here. It's a bit inconvenient, but this was the only way that I could think to wire the top triple. Put obsidian there and there. Get out a redstone comparator. Place it right there. Get out a hopper. Place one there. Crouch. Place a hopper facing into the first one. Break out the first one, and then place another hopper facing into the second one. This torch is already in place, so open up the hopper above the torch and put in 2 throwaway items. It doesn't have to be a stack size of 16, in case you watch my showcase, or not showcase, explanation video for the 12 by 12. It can be any 2 items that you don't care about throwing away. I just so happen to have eggs. 3 tick repeater on that obsidian block, crouch, and a 1 tick on that one, crouch, place a block on top of that hopper. Go over to this side, repeater on 2 ticks, block up, dust, then get out glass on top of that torch, and then a 2 tick repeater on top of the glass, running into a block, then glass there, 2 ticks. Go over to this side, place 2 glass there and there, then place down a total of 4 dust, then a sticky piston with an observer facing in towards the middle, and then go over to this block, or this torch, place a block above the torch, torch on the block, 1 tick repeater, and then an observer, just like so. Put down 5 dust, and then have an observer facing out of that piston, running into those pistons there. If you want to speed up this door, what you can do is you can place a block there and there, 1 tick repeater, and then dust. That will make these 5 pistons extend a little teensy bit faster on the closing, but I believe that if I didn't miss anything, that should be your entire door completed. As you can see, when you flick the lever, it all closes, and when you flick the lever once more, it also all opens. So yeah, that's it for the door, and I believe I should probably explain a few things. So before I get into the explanation, I'm going to really quickly show you all how to hook this up to a button input. So obviously your hallway continues on like this. The input for this door isn't the most convenient, so I'm going to be showing you a way that you can get the input up through the sides really, really easily. So if you have your sides here just like so, a really convenient input is to have a slider. And so you should put pistons like this, find this block next to that piston right there, and then put a temporary block down and place a piston facing up, then put blocks there just like so, move that one out, and then put a piston facing down right next to that repeater. You can also do this on this side, put a piston facing down next to that 2 tick repeater, and then a piston right underneath that block. They both work. I'm just going to be using that. So that's how you can get your signal up to the top relatively easily. Just make sure that your slider doesn't hit the push limit. As of right now, this thing is at 9 blocks, so you could bring this down 3 more. But once you go that far, you can't really go any further. And so get out a container. Get out a container, such as a cauldron or a composter, water bucket, to fill the cauldron, or stuff to fill the composter. Then place it right there. Put down a comparator, running into a block, dust, and then a block of your choice. Then you can bring the dust around to here. You can actually remove that block. Put a repeater running to a block right there, and then a repeater running into your door right there. And then that's one way that you can hook it up to the bottom. Now, as you can see, when I push that, the door activates, and it all retracts, or opens. And this can now be your new input. And so if you want to run in a T flip-flop or have a button input, it's very simple. And I'm going to really quickly route my input to the front. I'm going to actually be very, very particular about this. So this is where I'm putting my input, but of course you can put your input anywhere. Run your line in, and then anywhere along the line, you can break out some blocks. I'm going to personally break out these 2. Then put a dropper facing up, crouch, dropper facing towards the continuing of your line, Then crouch and put a hopper faced into the bottom dropper. These are dispensers, so don't make that mistake. That'll actually break it. Let me get out a dropper. There we are. So dropper facing up, dropper facing towards your line, and then your hopper facing into the first dropper. Then put a comparator on top of the first hopper, just like that, or the hopper, just like that. Next, you're going to want to open up the bottom dropper, place a throwaway item in there. It doesn't matter the stack size, but make sure that you have a repeater immediately coming out from your comparator. Otherwise, its signal strength might not be enough to continue your line. Then, change your input from dust to repeater, and you've got yourself a button input. And also, the input is now on the bottom. So yeah, now on to the explanation. So now onto the explanation for certain parts of this door. I'm going to try and cover everything, but I'm not going to explain every individual movement. I'm just going to cover general parts, like the top, sides, and bottom. So starting with the top, first thing I want to cover is why the input is so inconvenient. I was trying to keep the input on the bottom and also to the front, but obviously that wasn't going to happen with a synchronized animation on the sides. And it was actually really inconvenient to start from the bottom going up, because the sides were easier to wire with the signal coming from the top, and I'll explain why that is. But yeah, this was also convenient because it allowed me to incorporate the triple piston extender's extension into the input. So as you can see here, the rest of the door gets its signal from these repeaters coming out from the input block, right? And so this helps with the extension of the door. You might notice there's 2 tick here and then 4 ticks leading into this dust here, or 4 total ticks. So on the extension, what happens first is that gets powered with the flick of the lever. 2 ticks later, this activates that dust, powering that block, extending our second piston. And then 4 ticks later, these repeaters activate that dust there, extending our third piston in the triple extender. And so that's how the extension works. Then for the retraction, first thing that happens is that retracts, or actually I accidentally activated the door. So the first thing that happens is 4 ticks after the input is turned off. First thing is that turns off, then 4 ticks later, that deactivates. But this dust remains activated because of this little hopper clock right here. So this hopper clock has 2 items. When you flick the lever on, they drain from that hopper to that hopper. And these 4 ticks keep it locked, or these 3 ticks keep this one locked until, of course, the 3-tick repeater turns off. And then that torch turns on, locking this hopper. This comparator reads this hopper, and until this hopper finishes draining, that comparator stays on. And so as you can see, when I flick the lever, it turns on, and I'm going to really quickly make sure, yep, sides are hooked up. I'm going to remove that. As you can see here, when I flick the lever off, that comparator stays on for a very long time, and that's how I got in the second retraction, this piston right here. Then for the final retraction of the triple, nope, I accidentally broke that. This observer pulses that piston, which fires that one, getting in the final retraction. And I'm going to really quickly fix up the door. Here we go. So that's how the top works. The flattening of the ceiling is actually handled automatically by these 2 observers here. As you can see, when I power that, they pulse, and when I retract it, they pulse, flattening the ceiling. And because this line is in some ways connected to this final piston, I couldn't think of any way to speed this up any further. That had to be a repeater there, because if it wasn't a repeater, then obviously this would start clocking, and that's never any good. And it also would have broken the triple piston extender, which is also no good. So yeah, that's how the top works and the reason for the weird input. And yeah, let's get on to the sides. So now on to the sides. The sides are actually a bit tricky. To understand why, I'm just going to really quickly explain the layout. I didn't make this layout, or I didn't come up with this layout. This layout was made by ImmitJoe009. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. Well, he hasn't posted in a while. He's a really great redstoner, and if you want to see his latest builds, you can always check his Twitter. I guess I'll leave that in the description because that's where he's been more active. But yeah, this takes the whole idea of a folded double piston extender and makes it much easier to wire. Normally you'd have to have a really complicated setup with sliders pushing normal pistons and sticky pistons to get the whole thing to work. But here it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. For the opening it does the opposite, 3, 2, 1. If you watched my explanation video on the 12x12 a few days ago, you may recognize this. This is an ABC CBA, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 sort of logic here. And so to get that in, this was what I came up with. I'm actually pretty happy with this circuit. So first things that happens is that dust powers, this piston pushes down, turning on these torches, and then both of these pistons push that piston in right here, and that repeater powers the block, extending it. So pretty much it looks like this. There. And then up top here, these torches make it so that the final extension here takes around about 3 ticks. So that all happens in roughly 2, and then on the 3rd tick, that extends. And so by powering that, I have just now set off the other side, but yeah, that's how it all works. And of course, it all broke. There, it's fixed. So yeah, that's how the sides works. And then for the opening, after the 3 ticks, that pulls up, retracting that piston there. But the slider is where like the whole focus of the functionality comes from. Instead of having the slider automatically push back up by having a dust here or here, right, on that solid block, you can see I've actively avoided doing that, and have instead made it so that the slider is controlled by this here. This takes a handful of ticks longer than the retraction of this piston here, so that by the time the slider has been pushed up, deactivating this piston while it's in that position, the block is there for it to pull down. And then the rest of it I got through this right here. So the 1-tick repeater powers dust in there, powering that piston, turning off that torch, then that torch turns on, and then this all extends. And on the opening, that turns off, that turns on, that turns off, meaning that the whole thing sort of acts like this. If I quickly run in a repeater, 2-tick, it just does that. It automatically retracts that piston for you. And then the block that the piston was pulling down, this block right here, is controlled by that observer there. It pulses a 1-tick repeater right in that position, which updates that observer, which fires the piston, retracting the block, which is why that block retracts last on the sides. So that's how the sides work. I hope that was understandable. And I'm just going to really quickly get into the bottom now. So the bottom actually gets its inputs from the sides. And this was another reason that I had the slider be controlled. Not only did it allow for me to make it so that the sliders weren't random in their extensions, and also so that I could make it so that the bottom retracted properly, it also allowed me to make it so that the bottom wiring here wasn't out of sync on both sides, because again, unreliability. This side here gets its input from that redstone repeater, runs into here. The reason for that 4-tick, as you can see when I power this line, that extends. The reason for that 4-tick is because if I were to just have this thing deactivate immediately, it would be trying to pull that piston there, as you can see. So if I set that to 1-tick, it breaks. So by setting it to 4 ticks, that piston is moved out of the way before this thing starts to retract, which allows it to retract and instead of getting stuck. So yeah, that's the whole door. I hope the explanation was understandable. I tried to keep to the things that were, important about all the different sections of the door, while also not just explaining the use of every single block. So yeah, that's just about it for this video. I'm ViscosComb24, and I'll see you next time.